The second I see a resume where there's just like job hopping, I'm like, oh God, red flag. That's like the first thing, because it's usually not a good sign. And then you can usually vet that a little bit further in the actual interview.
Well, hello and welcome to the Jay Sterling Hughes Show, where we share the straight truth on how we have scaled a family law practice from 0 to 25 attorneys in 2 states and over $15 million in revenue. And my purpose here is to document what's working and what's not working in our practice with hopes that you can take that and recontextualize that for your practice and shorten your success curve. And my guest today is one of our top leaders, Katie VanDeusen. She is an exceptional attorney, an amazing person, a great mom, wife, friend, and a tremendously strong leader of our Illinois team. Katie has built our Illinois team from scratch. Katie, I remember vividly recruiting you on LinkedIn. We met at that Starbucks in Naperville, and here we are today, 7 years later, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So Katie co-leads a legal team of 40 plus lawyers and paralegals and legal assistants, and she has just made a major impact. And just lastly, Katie, just to acknowledge, you have built an extremely high performing Illinois team. And one of the things that I want to point out that you do exceptionally well is you're able to bring a brand new attorney into our team and in a relatively short period of time, help them feel supported, taken care of, and start to perform at a really strong level. So I just am hoping I can maybe dig into that little brain of yours and get as much out as we possibly can today. So tell us your story.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, my story, I will say I grew up, my parents are in Wheaton and they're still in Wheaton. I had an older sister and decided, I think right around high school, maybe later in college, that I wanted to go to law school. And I think it was really kind of like based around desire to help people. So I went to high school, then I went to college, clearly. I went to college at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and then took the LSAT, got into a couple different law schools in Chicago. And I knew I wanted to stay local because my parents are here, my family's here, so I didn't want to leave the state. And I ended up choosing John Marshall and went to law school there. During law school, I decided I wanted to just explore different areas, but one that stood out was family law. And I was an intern with a judge in Cook County at the Daly Center. And that judge was just a really great mentor to me and kind of started really opening up my eyes to family law. And he had a particular call, which was like post-judgment. And so I really got good exposure to family law issues there. And then I started taking like a family law class. And then I was a law clerk at a family law firm. And I just didn't want to do anything else. So that's all I really have ever done is family law. And I think I've been lucky. I've had amazing mentors from a young age that really helped guide me. The very first law firm I was at, there were 2 attorneys in particular that I still, keep in touch with and I'm friends with. And I credit them with all of the experience that I had early on. Yeah. And they kind of helped guide me, gave advice, experience, things like that. And then I went to another family law firm locally in the suburbs. Again, great mentors. They knew their stuff. And I think I just kept honing those skills and becoming more experienced in that field or in that area. And then met you, Jeff, and, just took the leap. Like literally, I wanted to make a change and fully committed to this and building this with you. And don't ever regret it. Once again.
Well, that was a good day for me and a good day for us for sure.
Exactly.
With all those mentors you've had, that had to really shape your philosophy on mentoring, because you've developed into a terrific mentor. Because if you look at results, you're a superstar in the mentor side of it. What is your philosophy on mentoring, and how do you go about executing on that?
That's a good question. So I would say in terms of mentoring, I think my approach is unique to every individual that I come into contact with. So I think that like when it comes to mentoring individuals, it's not a one size fits all. You can't just approach it from, this worked the last time, so it's going to work again. You almost have to just uniquely approach each individual that you come into contact with. And then I also think it's important to figure out, get to know them, understand what drives them, where their strengths are and where their weaknesses are, and how to best develop that within each unique individual. And I think that's been what I've relied on from the very beginning here, is just trying to understand the person who I'm trying to support and give them the tools to get better. And, people who are receptive to that, I think, have just risen to the occasion and, surpassed expectations. So,
yeah, I've seen you really develop your abilities in the area of giving tough conversations and having those moments where you go to a developing attorney and point out an area where you feel like they could do better. What's your approach on that?
I would say a couple different things. One, I feel like I always try to be myself, be authentic. That's one thing I would tell people to do. And second, when delivering something that is difficult, I think hitting it head on is the best thing to do, and being as clear as possible in terms of your expectations. Having clarity and setting reality for someone is vital to helping them, and when you deliver that type of news in a way that is supportive and challenging to the person, I think is what makes it resonate, and I also think too, difficult conversations, there is a strategy to it in terms of if I'm having a coaching session with someone or if I'm reviewing someone, it's you don't want to just focus on the negative either. You do want to focus on what are they excelling at, what are their strengths, and having credibility, I think, is huge in that, and showing them how to take steps to help where they're struggling, gives you that credibility and builds that relationship and that rapport with the person so that they want to get better and they want to listen to you and they want to further develop themselves versus it kind of falling on deaf ears.
I recall one time we had a conversation about one of your teammates, and you needed to confront her around how she was dressing. She was not professional, presenting in a way that was kind of a bummer to clients, I think. I remember that was a tough conversation. And how did you conduct that particular one?
I want to say I probably just hit it head on and was really clear in terms of what my expectations were. I think high expectations. And when I communicate with my team about what those expectations are and what I expect of them and why I expect it of them. So, for example, they are an extension of us. Our firm and our reputation, this attorney is an extension of that. And you want to be sure that whether it's a client or whether it's an opposing counsel, or even if it's a judge, you want to represent the best version of yourself. So I think that's probably how I approached that at the time, was I know you're capable of this, and I know that my expectation is not something that's unattainable. You can get there and you can do it. And setting that clearly for them, I think, is probably how I did that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So as these new inexperienced attorneys are coming onto your team, have you noticed any patterns of where they struggle the most to kind of get traction and get going?
I would say the only pattern that I've noticed is confidence. And that, I think, is difficult because, with an inexperienced attorney, they're probably not going to have confidence, and they're going to be inexperienced, clearly, because they're young. And so that's something that I think takes time. But I also think, in terms of confidence, it's something that you can help develop in someone and really push them. I think there are ways that you can get them outside their comfort zone and make them realize that they're fully capable of these things. You just need to push them to do it, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. And how do you do that? How do you push them?
I would say giving them the tools so that they understand how to do things first and then get that comfort without coddling them or being a security blanket. Like, I think there is a dangerous line where it can be too safe when you have someone who's, helping support you. So I think you have to balance giving them the tools that they feel comfortable to execute on their jobs on a day-to-day basis, while also not being that security blanket or that safety net for them too much. You need to push them so that you want to see that drive in them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So as you're looking for that drive, what are the markers that you're looking for? What qualities are you trying to understand about their drive?
I think someone who has drive shows me that they are not okay with just a mediocre performance. They push themselves, they're hardworking, they go above and beyond. They want to be the best version of themselves that they can be. And I think, as a leader, you're trying to show them the road on how to get there and be the best version of themselves.
Yeah. So prior to joining our team, I don't think I've ever asked you this, Katie, but had you ever had a position in leadership prior to joining our team?
I do not think so. I mean, at my last two firms, I think I was, at my last one, I think I was an associate attorney. I had not yet been a partner. So when I joined, it was just fresh.
Yeah. So you've obviously, in the last 6 or 7 years, you've developed your leadership abilities pretty extensively. What resources, how have you done that? How have you moved so quickly from the starting line to a fairly large team today, one of the larger family law teams in the area for sure?
A couple things. So I would say, personally, I think I have a lot of drive and, I knew I was capable. So getting there, it was just a matter of when. And then I would also say relying on people who are close to me to help, shape and guide and make decisions. So, relying on Kim on our team or Allie or Jessica, those individuals who are trusted and those people who, they voice opinions and you want to listen to them and you want to be sure that, you're weighing everything when deciding what to do next. So I would say relying on my team and the people who, work closely with me, just people who are close to me, like my parents, my husband, those types of individuals always help guide me and make sure that I've got a level head on my shoulders and, check every once in a while, which is good. And then I would just say good mentors within the role, like you, Jeff, and Tony at the time. I mean, I think that having those mentors within the role from start to finish has definitely helped me along the way to where I am, now. I truly do believe that for sure.
Yeah. One of the concepts we talk a lot about in our discussions in the firm is when you lead, you have to balance that support, helping the teammate, giving them enough support with challenge, balancing that with challenge. That can be a really delicate balance that is always changing, right, with individual teammates because it's different with everybody. And I know for one, I have struggled here because I'm way more toward the challenge end of thing than I am to the support side of things. But you've managed to balance that very, very well. How do you do that? What are some of the ways you keep yourself in check by not going too far to one extreme or the other?
That's a good question. So in terms of
maybe you do it so intuitively, you don't even know how you do it, but I noticed it. I'm not alone on this.
I was going to say it's really hard when you think about how you operate and the choices you make or what you do, from on such a big scale, I would say, let's see, I think being authentic and trying to make sure that you're coming from a place of credibility with your team,
Yeah.
I don't know if this answers the question, but I feel like a lot of times in order to influence someone and to have them want to, take guidance from you, you have to have credibility within what you're talking to. So I think that, having that authenticity and making sure that I have that credibility has helped me when communicating with others and making sure that the balance is there and that they do feel like I care about them as a teammate. I am supportive of them always, but also I'm not going to ignore an issue. We're going to just hit it head on. If there is an issue, this is what it is, and this is how we can improve upon it, or this is how I would suggest we improve upon it. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Well, you didn't say this, but I'll point it out. They have to know you care.
Right.
And you certainly do it for your team. They sense that, they feel that, and just how you interact with them. Yes. And the fact that you can have these really hard conversations and point things out and come head on. They're not wondering what you're thinking or how they're doing. You're giving them feedback and say, you're right here.
Yes.
This is where you need to be, and setting that expectation out there. So,
yes.
Now, as you've built out your team, you didn't come in here with a playbook, and we've kind of built this as we've kind of flown along here. Mm-hmm. Have you started to find yourself arriving on a set of best practices and kind of your guiding principles of your leadership of your team?
I would say, in terms of best practices, I think clearly checking in regularly with your teammates and making sure that you're listening to feedback and absorbing that, and then making sure that doesn't fall on deaf ears, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. If you hear feedback from your team, you're doing something about it, or you're attempting to do something about it. And also nipping things in the bud if there's something from a cultural standpoint that doesn't make sense for the team as a whole, making sure that you just attack it from the very beginning and get rid of that right off the bat. I mean, in terms of other things like playbook, I guess I would say, I definitely think that there are certain things that I've learned over the course of me being in the position that I'm in terms of hiring and adding to the team. And I think as a whole, we're very protective of making sure that who you add is the right fit, and that growth makes sense for the team as a whole.
Hiring, selection, we call it selection in our firm. You've had a pretty good track record. You had a couple misses in there, I would say, but overall, very strong track record with your hiring. Mm-hmm. What do you look for in a potential new attorney joining your team, or a PL, paralegal?
Yeah, I would say drive. That is the one thing that you
scream for that. I have a hard time seeing that, because I just see all the gloss and I get so excited with someone. I don't really have a good intuition on the drive part. How do you do that?
I think, listen, it's we've definitely made mistakes. There's no doubt about it, right? And it's interviewing and selecting someone is incredibly difficult, because you are making a decision based on such a small window of time with someone. And so you get it wrong sometimes. I think the key is that if you get it wrong, you take care of it right away. Right away. Don't wait, because I think that just creates, it's just not good, Mm-hmm. In terms of how I notice drive, I think it's based on the questions that you ask, so Kim and I do all of our kind of preliminary interviews, and we try to be very cognizant of what we're asking them, and if there's red flags. So Kim and I, we always listen for red flags, and usually, if we hear one or even see one, we're usually both aligned with that, which also helps confirm the choice to either go forward with them or not.
Yeah. So, you got to give me a juicy one. I want to, what's a juicy red flag that you've had that you both looked at each other out of the corner of your eye and thought,
I think one would be the way that people speak about their former employer, whether good or bad. And that is a red flag. If it's, especially also the other one is a job hopper. The second I see a resume where there's just job hopping, I'm oh God, red flag. That's the first thing, because it's usually not a good sign. And then you can usually vet that a little bit further in the actual interview. And that's probably the biggest red flag that I've seen.
Yeah, I recall distinctly sending you a couple of people I was really high on, and you and Kim did your little screening process, and it came. You remember you called me one time, like, Jeff, no, what are you thinking?
Yeah, we're pretty. I think that Kim and I, we run a tight ship, so
yeah. So I interrupted you. You were going through kind of like your process for how you vet and look for drive.
Yeah.
Is there any further thoughts on that?
I would say just making sure that you ask the right questions and that you see that they want to push themselves. Again, I think it all boils down to, do they want to be the best version of themselves? And are they, also people being capable of taking feedback. That's one thing that I will also mention is just huge. Like team members who are able to take constructive criticism and feedback and not let it eat at them or be a negative thing, and instead utilize that to drive them forward and to make changes and to get better. That is something that I think is like, if I don't see that, it's not going to work, Yeah.
You're talking about in the interview process and looking for drive and asking the right questions. Are there any questions that kind of stick out to you as kind of your go-to kind of gold questions that tend to like reveal really good stuff?
Honestly, I'd probably have to check back. I can't think of any right off the top of my head. I think, sometimes those personal questions will reveal quite a bit too. Like, what do you like to do on your personal time? And, what do you think about work-life balance? We always ask, how many case files have you worked on previously? And did you feel overwhelmed at any point in time? And how they respond to questions like, what did you like or not like about a certain situation from, your prior employer? I think those are all really telling questions to try to get to who they are as a person. So those are just some general ones off the top of my head, but to get into more detail, I'd probably need more time to think through.
Okay. Fair. I'm putting you on the spot. I didn't forewarn you on that question.
That's right.
Over the time you've been here, what have been some of your proudest leadership accomplishments, leadership moments?
Honestly, this might sound very general, but it's the truth. Anytime that I've given feedback to a team member and they have risen or absolutely exceeded expectations, and the growth in people, like when you hire a Leah or a Nina or, Ryan, Jacqueline, those individuals who started a certain place and the growth that you see in them, that I think has been absolutely by far my proudest moments being here. And just, you pour into people and what you put in is what you get in return. And I think that's been probably the most rewarding thing by far working here. It's not, metrics or whatever. It's truly the growth you see in individuals. I think that's been the biggest thing.
You've left a huge imprint on their whole career going forward. So that's something that's really worth being gratified about. Also, you just brought out a real important principle of leadership. I mean, leaders make their teammates' lives better. And there's no question that Katie VanDeusen's presence in the lives of all your teammates that you interact with daily in particular, you've just made their lives, you've improved them. So good for you. Congratulations.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
In our firm, we track a lot, don't we?
Yes.
Metric wise. And one of the things we track are referrals, attorneys that bring in referrals. And every year we do this kind of award. And it's okay, who had the most referrals this year? And let's celebrate that person. And every year, blah, 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 Katie VanDeusen, again, another year. And which is indicative of so many things of the service you provide clients and just how well you take care of them. But once those clients are referred back or they refer their friends back or something, sometimes you don't handle them and you pass them off. And that's got to be really hard for someone who is protecting their reputation. And I see attorneys really struggle with passing off and delegating. That's really probably the one factor that holds firms back from growing because they can't develop their team. And you've done a really good job of delegating and passing off cases. Walk through what that's like emotionally, psychologically, and practically. How do you do that?
Okay. So first of all, I'll be totally honest with you as well, Jeff. This is an area that I probably struggle with as well. I don't know if I'm great at this, to be totally honest with you. I still struggle with it. And it's something that I try to get better at, and just delegating in general. That's something that is an area of improvement that I actively know I need to get better at. But to answer your question, I would say it all boils down to like trust, right? And that client knows that they trust you and the team that you have. So for example, if I had Nina working with me, I knew that I could trust Nina because I trained Nina, and I know she cares about not only the client, but client experience. And so, that reputation piece of things is also there, like she wants to be the best personally and professionally. So there is that element of trust from like a coworker standpoint, I guess you could say. Like, I trust that she would do just as good of a job as I would on these cases that I would be delegating. And then the other thing in, practice wise, so I would always play an involved role still. Like, it's never going to be a full pass off where that client is never hearing from me again. It's something where I think in order to do that successfully without having the client feel like you're just passing me off to someone else and you don't care, you have to maintain an active role within that relationship. So not only are you continuing to communicate and be involved in the case, but you're doing that kind of collaboratively with the attorney who's assigned to the case. Yeah. And, I think that that's been how I've been able to delegate in the past successfully. Or similarly, like with Ryan, her and I would work on case files together. And I think that that gives the client reassurance while also exposing Ryan to more experience, legal issues, things like that. And the client still feels reassured that they have not only me still, involved in the case, but also the attorney that's doing the day-to-day work. Again, I can trust them because I trained her and I trust her work product. I trust that she cares about client experience and, that's something that is important to them. I do not think I would feel comfortable delegating to someone that did not have my same approach to things. That's just me being honest, so.
Yeah. So you've got to know that teammate's going to
take care of
have that drive to take care of the client. Yeah.
Yes.
So I know that has led to some frustrating moments. We've talked about some of your proudest moments. So let's kind of flip that coin around a little bit.
Okay.
Not everything is roses and rainbows and everything. So what have been some of your more frustrating moments in leading?
I would say that probably the thing that sticks out the most is when you as a leader might see something a little bit sooner than others and you want to take action on something that you may not be in a position to take action on, but you wish that would happen. So, or you could maybe and it really boils down to you may see something sooner than others and may want to take care of it, but you can't because you're not in that position to do that. And so, removing like toxicity or individuals who may not be the best fit, that's probably been like the biggest area of frustration.
So you mentioned earlier that when you joined our team, you're ready for a change and you knew that you would be in a position of leadership. It was just a matter of time, I think is how you described it.
Yep.
So along the way, since I won't put you on the spot for this one, along the way, as you've been with our team, was there a moment where that belief and that confidence that you have naturally and that you had coming in was validated for the first time? You're like, okay, I knew it. Now I know it. You know what I mean?
Specific to leadership, correct?
I
would say,
when was that first time you're like, oh, I actually have it. I believed it. Now I actually have seen evidence of that.
I think just in terms of my own journey, I would say when I came here and I was able to perform at a high level and understand how the firm worked and metrics wise, I felt like I could perform at a very high level. So I think that was the first thing where I'm like, I know I'm good at this. I know I can be really good at this and I can accomplish this and I can do it, on a consistent basis. Right. And then I think after I did that, when it came to the leadership side of things, I feel like it just kind of naturally fell into place because I had a team that trusted me. I trusted them. We worked very well together. I also think that, like, from a leadership standpoint, I don't think I would ever ask someone on my team to do something that I wasn't willing to do myself, and like get my hands dirty and get in it and work really hard and do what I expect others to do. And I think people could see that. And I think it was just like a natural like progression, if that makes sense. And I think the first time maybe ever it was validated was probably like when you promoted me to MP within the region. That's like the first thing that pops out of my mind from a leadership standpoint. Like, you know, we know you are a top performer, you're a hard worker, we understand it and recognize these things. And we feel like you can lead. And it's like, okay, well, if Jeff Hughes thinks that I can do this, then I can do it. And
Katie, you led way before you had the title. So
I know,
yes, you led way before you had the title. In fact, I mean, I don't know if even a lot of people in our firm know it, but I mean, you kind of held both roles for a couple years before you actually officially took the title of MP in Illinois. And I remember recruiting you, telling you how great it was going to be and how excited we all were. And then I remember coming to you, I don't know, maybe a year into your tenure and think, hey, Katie, we're going to pause growing Illinois for a couple of years because we got some projects we got to see through in Wisconsin. Can you just go into a holding pattern for me? And I can't imagine how frustrating that must have felt, but you did it. And you held it down for a couple of years until we're ready to turn our attention back towards supporting your team. So thank you. You've been a common thread of stability.
Well, I think it's trust. Like you know, from the very beginning, I think like I always have maintained trust in you and Tony, and just, you know, the decisions you make, the way you approach things, like, and I just always had trust in that. So to me, you know, that was something that it may have been frustrating at the time, but I was like, it'll be okay. We'll get through it and then we'll move forward, and, you know, it'll happen. It'll happen. It's just a matter of when. So
I remember one funny story where I think I lost your trust for about 4 minutes because it was April 1st of one year. And I sent out an email saying that we've done the research and we've determined that there's a lot more money to be made in criminal law. And effective today, we're switching over to criminal law. And it took about 4 minutes for me to get a phone call from you. I saw it come through on my phone. I'm like, oh, April Fools. And you were so like red-faced because for that hook, line, and sinker.
I think that's just a sign of how gullible I might be in life, because I didn't even like, oh my God, it's April Fool's. Like, hello, you know? No.
Yeah. No, I can't see you doing criminal law at all, Katie. You're made for family law, not criminal law.
That's right.
Oh, so let me switch gears here. I want to do a lightning round here and we'll close out. So I know you're a Swiftie. That's well documented within our firm with your, I don't know how much you spend on concert tickets every year, but
I will not.
I think a lot.
I'll say too money.
Yeah. What is a quote that's meaningful to you?
So I actually had to like look one up, but of course I wanted to make it Taylor Swift based. So the one that I found that resonated most with me was, no matter what happens in life, be good to people. Being good to people is a wonderful legacy to leave behind. And that's by Taylor Swift.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what resource has helped you grow the most in your leadership?
Mentors.
Or as a lawyer?
Good mentors, 100%. I think that good mentorship has made the difference in my career.
Yeah. Is there a practice pet peeve that really gets at you and gets you all fired up?
You could ask Kimberly Rose this question, and I think she would respond exactly with this. I am somewhat neurotic when it comes to work product and like sloppy mistakes. Like, there's nothing that will drive me more insane than a sloppy mistake, whether it's like a name, whether it's a county, whether like something like that will literally drive me insane. So sloppy.
My favorite ones are getting the pleadings wrong and putting one client's pleading caption on another client's paperwork. That's the one that I just like, oh man, that's the worst. You're like exposing yourself to the court system, to your client, and to your team. It's the worst.
It's not.
Oh, is there something in your life that you're really proud of that most people have no idea about?
So this was a hard one. I mean, the way that I would respond to this, and this probably doesn't even really answer the question because most people probably would know this, but I would say my relationship with my husband by far is something that I, in terms of my life, am most proud of. I think that, life is hard enough, and like to have found someone who is like my best friend, who supports me and understands like the craziness of life. We have 3 kids at home, all boys. So it's like, it's definitely chaotic and most days a circus. So I would say, honestly, my relationship with him is the best thing, most proud, biggest accomplishment of my life to date, I would say.
I'll have to make sure I send him a link of this. He'll be really happy to read that.
I hope so.
Yeah. If you could give a word of encouragement to a law firm leader right now, what would you tell that person?
I would honestly say just keep pushing yourself. Keep pushing yourself to be the best version of you and unlock that in others around you. Yeah.
Awesome. With that, I just want to say thank you for carving out a portion of your day to talk with me and to share your insights.
Thank you, Jeff, for having me. I appreciate it.